During his stream, Asmongold decided to throw out some pretty inflammatory comments, calling Palestinians terrible people and saying they come from an inferior culture. Oh yeah, he didn't stop there. He also suggested that the thousands of Palestinians, many of whom are civilians, including women and children, who have been killed in Israeli attacks essentially had it coming. His logic? Palestinians have genocide baked into their Sharia law, so in his mind, it's somehow justified. Let's pause here for a second and put that into perspective. We're talking about over 41,000 people who have been killed in this conflict, with 70% of those victims being women and children. That's 11,000 children dead, innocent lives wiped out, and Asmongold is sitting here saying it's okay because he thinks their culture is inferior. Like, seriously? Can you even wrap your head around the level of ignorance it takes to make a statement like that? What he's implying here is that these children, these innocent lives, deserve to die because of where they come from, because of their religion or their culture. I don't care how you try to spin it, that's just plain wrong, so naturally this didn't sit well with the internet. His remarks went viral, spreading across various social media platforms faster than you can say cancelled. And guess what? Twitch did not waste any time in taking action. His Zakra account was temporarily banned for violating the platform's community guidelines, which, big shocker, prohibit hateful conduct. Twitch even went as far as replacing his channel with a message stating it's unavailable due to guideline violations. Ouch. That's like getting a giant scarlet letter stamped on your digital persona. But let's talk about his so-called apology, shall we? After the massive backlash, Asmongold did what many public figures do when they're facing a career-threatening situation. He hopped onto social media, X to be specific, and issued an apology, or at least something that vaguely resembled one. His tweet read, "Looking back on it, I was way too much of an about the Palestine thing, my bad." Wait, that's it? My bad? Really? It gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. He goes on to say, "Of course no one deserves to have their life destroyed, even if they do things or have views I find regressive." Okay, so now you're suddenly concerned about human lives? Where was this energy when you were spouting off about how Palestinians come from an inferior culture? It's almost like the words are coming from someone who's more concerned about keeping their streaming career afloat than actually addressing the gravity of their mistake. In my opinion, and I'm sure many of you will agree, this apology is more about damage control than actual remorse. I mean, let's be honest. His original stance made it crystal clear that he wasn't losing any sleep over the deaths of innocent people. He painted this horrifying picture that somehow justified the mass killing of civilians, all because of his warped perspective on Palestinian culture. And then he expects us to believe that half-hearted "my bad" is going to make everything okay? Please, it's almost laughable if it weren't so tragically tone-deaf. Let's dig a little deeper into the heart of his comments. During that infamous stream, Asmongold didn't just casually drop a controversial opinion, he went all in. He said,
"If you want to consider a genocide as a systematic killing of a group of people, they have genocide built into Sharia law right now."
So according to him, Palestinians deserve to be victims of genocide because of their laws. That's one of the most twisted justifications I've ever heard. He then doubled down, adding, "I'm not gonna cry effer, that ain't a river when people who have genocide baked into their laws are getting genocided." The more you hear, the more it sounds like a poorly crafted argument designed to rile people up, rather than express any coherent thought. It's like he's trying to justify his lack of empathy by pinning the blame on the victims themselves, and the fact that he refuses to back down even after all the backlash makes it all the more frustrating. After all, when you say that 11,000 innocent children deserve to die simply because of where they were born or what their culture teaches, you're no longer just expressing an opinion, you're crossing a moral line. And speaking of his online presence, can we talk about his YouTube apology video for a second? It was a mess, literally. His room was so dirty and cluttered, it's hard not to draw a parallel between the state of his environment and the state of his thoughts. I mean, dude, clean your room and your mind. It was almost like the trash surrounding him was symbolic of the trash coming out of his mouth. You can't help but wonder what the roaches in his walls think about all of this. Probably disgusted, just like the rest of us. Even some of his fellow streamers, who usually keep things pretty neutral, have called him out. Hassan Piker, aka Hassanabi, tried to engage him in a discussion about his comments before the ban, but Asmongold didn't budge from his original stance. Meanwhile, other streamers, like Brook AB, didn't hold back in labeling his remarks for what they were: straight up racism. And honestly, that's what it boils down to. When you start saying things like one group of people is inferior to another, or that the mass killing of civilians is somehow justifiable, you've crossed from expressing a controversial opinion into spreading hate. What's wild is how someone with such a massive platform with millions of followers could be so reckless with their words. Asmongold isn't some obscure figure in the Twitch world. He's one of the most well-known streamers out there. When you have that kind of reach, people are listening, whether you like it or not. So, when you use your platform to spread harmful and hateful ideas, you're contributing to a much bigger problem. The internet doesn't exist in a vacuum. What you say has real-world consequences. And let's not forget Twitch's role in all of this. The platform was quick to act, but it raises questions about how these situations should be handled moving forward. Twitch's community guidelines are clear. They don't allow content that promotes or encourages discrimination, but does a temporary ban really send the right message? Should streamers with massive audiences face stricter consequences when they cross the line into hate speech? It's something we should all be thinking about. So where does this leave Asmongold? Well, for now, he's temporarily banned, but he hasn't been cancelled entirely. Whether or not he can recover from this depends on how he handles things moving forward. Apologizing is a step, but it needs to be sincere, and it needs to be followed by action. Cleaning up his language, his mindset, and maybe even his room wouldn't be a bad place to start. But will he do that? Or will this just be another footnote in a long history of controversial streamers who say dumb things and then try to weasel their way out of accountability? In the end, the real question is whether Asmongold's apology was just PR damage control, or if he's truly learned anything from this. And honestly, I'm not holding my breath. When someone's knee-jerk reaction is to justify the deaths of innocent people based on some distorted view of their culture, it's hard to believe they'll change overnight. But hey, I could be wrong. Maybe this will be the wake-up call he needs. Or maybe, just maybe, he'll continue down this path until there's no one left to listen to him. What do you think? Was Asmongold's apology enough, or is he just trying to save face? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's get into it.